Director Comey also issued a clarification about the number of Americans fighting in Syria. He says only about a dozen Americans are actually fighting alongside Muslim extremist groups.
Federal agents just proved that there is nowhere left to hide. In a massive joint operation, the DEA and FBI stormed a fortified Syrian compound, taking down 127 high-value targets and grabbing $23 million in illegal weapons. Everyone is obsessed with how domestic agencies pulled this off on foreign soil, and that is putting it lightly.
30,000 civilians from eastern Aleppo have been displaced this week alone.
For starters, the raid was so fast that the people inside did not even have time to reach for their gear. What most people do not realize is that this compound was actually a front for something much bigger. Secrets buried under the sand. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the silence of the Syrian desert was ripped apart by the arrival of a massive federal task force. This was not a standard military drill, but a coordinated strike by the FBI and DEA against a compound that intelligence had been watching for over 3 years. The goal was simple: erase the command post from the map and take out the network that had been attacking Western interests. As the sun began to peek over the horizon, 127 people found themselves in handcuffs before they could even realize what was happening. This is a key detail because the speed of the raid prevented any significant resistance, even though the compound was guarded by some of the most dangerous individuals in the region. The agents moved with a level of precision that you usually only see in the movies, clearing room after room in a facility that was designed to be a fortress. Inside, they found a $23 million weapons cache that was so large it took hours just to catalog everything. We are talking about advanced gear that was hidden behind reinforced walls and secret doors. So, here is the deal. This raid was the culmination of thousands of hours of surveillance and high-stakes undercover work. The agents used thermal sensors and satellite imagery to map out the compound before they ever set foot on the ground. They knew exactly where the heat vents were and where the people were sleeping. It is not that simple, though, because as they moved deeper into the structure, they realized the compound was much larger than the map suggested. There were underground levels that had been carved directly into the rock, providing a perfect hiding spot for both people and equipment. The DEA was particularly interested in the financial records found on site, which suggested a massive substance trafficking ring was funding the entire operation. This connection between illegal substances and high-end weaponry is what brought these two specific agencies together for such a risky mission. Basically, they were looking for a needle in a haystack and ended up finding the entire sewing kit. The air was thick with the smell of dust and cordite as the perimeter was secured. Every single person captured was processed and moved to a secure location for questioning. What most people do not realize is that the $23 million cache included everything from anti-tank missiles to sophisticated jamming equipment. This was a massive win for global security, but it also raised a lot of questions about how such a large stash could be assembled without anyone noticing. The federal agents had to work quickly because the window of opportunity was closing fast. They knew that local militias would likely respond if they stayed too long, so every second was counted. The precision of the operation was hands down the most impressive part of the morning. By the time the local authorities realized what had happened, the task force was already preparing to leave with their prizes. The crazy part is that one of the arrested individuals was a high-level figure that had been ghosting international law for over a decade. This arrest alone made the entire mission a success, but the weapons cache was the cherry on top. It makes you wonder how many more of these compounds are tucked away in the valleys where no one is looking. Everything about the facility suggested it was built to survive a heavy siege from the air or the ground. $23 million secret exposed. The weapons found inside the compound were not just old surplus gear, they were brand new pieces of tech that had no business being in a desert compound. Federal agents discovered row after row of crates filled with enough gear to arm a small country. The total value of the seizure was placed at $23 million, which is a massive blow to the black market. And get this, the cache included items that were specifically designed to take down aircraft and armored vehicles. It is not just about the money, it is about the capability that was taken off the table. The DEA agents on the scene noted that the packaging on some of the crates matched shipments usually associated with high-level substance cartels. This suggests a global network that stretches far beyond the borders of Syria. Yeah, about that, the connection between these groups is exactly what the FBI has been trying to prove for years. The weapons were stored in a climate-controlled section of the underground bunker to prevent them from degrading in the extreme desert heat. This tells us that the people running this place were not just amateurs, they were professionals who knew exactly how to maintain their inventory. The facility featured thick concrete walls and advanced security systems that required the agents to use specialized breaching equipment. But here is the catch. The security was mostly focused on the outside, meaning once the agents got through the front door, the inside was relatively easy to secure. They found 25 miles of cabling used for communications and surveillance throughout the valley. This allowed the compound to act as a central hub for multiple smaller outposts in the area. The sheer volume of information seized from the servers inside is expected to lead to even more raids in the coming months. For starters, the data log showed a list of buyers and sellers that spans across 3 different continents. This raid was just the tip of the iceberg, and the agents know it. The $23 million figure might even go up once they finish appraising the more exotic tech they found. There were drones, encrypted radios, and even night vision goggles that were newer than what some local police departments use in the States. The fact that 127 people were guarding this stash shows how important it was to the organization. Every person arrested is a potential source of information that could lead the FBI to the heads of this network. The desert terrain around the compound was unforgiving, but the task force had been training in similar conditions for months to prepare. They used U.S. measures for all their planning, ensuring that every foot of the compound was accounted for in their tactical maps. The success of the seizure is putting a lot of pressure on other groups in the region who now realize their secret spots are not so secret anymore. It is a game of cat and mouse where the cat just got a lot better at tracking. The records found on the site suggest that this location was only one small part of a much larger puzzle. Inside the underground fortress, one of the most impressive parts of the compound was the underground tunnel system that connected the different buildings. Federal agents had to navigate a labyrinth of dark hallways that were carved 10 feet into the solid rock. These tunnels allowed the 127 occupants to move between sections without being seen by satellites overhead. The crazy part is that the tunnels were equipped with air filtration systems and backup generators, meaning they could stay down there for weeks if they had to. The DEA discovered a section of the tunnels that was being used to process illegal chemicals, further proving the substance connection. The FBI focused on the communication rooms, where they found maps and plans for future operations. It is not that simple, though, because the tunnels were also booby-trapped with sensors that would alert the guards to any intruders. The task force had to use robotic scouts to clear the way before they could send in the human teams. This slowed them down, but it kept everyone safe during the breach. What most people do not realize is how much engineering went into a place that was supposed to be a secret. The walls were reinforced with steel plates that could withstand a 2,000-pound impact. This level of protection is usually reserved for government bunkers, not militia outposts in the middle of nowhere. So, here is the deal. The intelligence community believes that foreign engineers were likely brought in to help build this place. The level of sophistication found in the wiring and the plumbing was way beyond what you would expect from a local group. As the agents moved through the tunnels, they found living quarters that were surprisingly comfortable, with kitchens and medical bays. This compound was essentially a small underground city. The $23 million in weapons were mostly stored in the deepest parts of the system to keep them safe from any surface attacks. The agents had to use heavy machinery to lift the crates out of the tunnels and onto the transport trucks waiting above. This took several hours of hard labor in the sun, but the payoff was worth it. They found 127 beds in the barracks, matching the exact number of people they arrested. This means they caught everyone who was on site at the time of the raid. The logistics of moving that many prisoners while also transporting millions of dollars in weapons was a massive challenge. Hands down, the coordination between the FBI and DEA was the only reason this did not turn into a disaster. They had to maintain a secure perimeter for miles to ensure no one could interfere with the extraction. The desert heat was pushing 100 degrees, but the agents kept working until the last crate was loaded. Evidence suggests that the people living here had been preparing for a long-term stay. Tactical precision in foreign lands. The success of the mission relied heavily on the technology used by the federal agents before they even arrived. For 3 years, they used high-altitude drones and sniper pods to watch the compound from 9 miles away. These sensors could pick up the heat signatures of people moving inside the buildings and even see when new shipments arrived. This allowed the planners to create a detailed schedule of when the guards were most likely to be tired or distracted. The crazy part is that the agents could see the $23 million in weapons being moved into the compound over several months. They waited until the stash was at its largest before they made their move. It is not that simple, though, because they also had to coordinate with local allies to ensure the airspace was clear. The F-15 aircraft provided top cover during the raid, watching for any threats that might come from the surrounding mountains. These planes have radars that can see for miles, giving the ground teams plenty of warning if anyone was coming to help the people inside. The pilots were ready to drop 2,000-pound precision tools if the situation turned south, but thankfully it stayed quiet. But here is the catch. The agents on the ground had to be careful not to trigger any alarms that would lead to the destruction of the evidence. They knew that if the people inside had enough warning, they would likely burn the records or blow up the weapons cache. The tactical teams used flashbangs and non-lethal tools to keep the 127 targets from reacting. This allowed the FBI to secure the servers and the DEA to grab the chemical samples before they could be ruined. The coordination was so tight that the entire breach took less than 5 minutes. What most people do not realize is that the agents were also using jamming gear to block any cell signals or radio waves coming from the compound. This kept the guards from calling for backup and allowed the task force to work in peace. The use of U.S. measures in the tactical headsets allowed the different teams to stay perfectly synchronized as they moved through the complex. They reported their positions every 10 feet, ensuring that no one was left behind in the dark tunnels. The transition from the air-conditioned planes to the dusty ground was a shock, but the teams were ready for it. This level of professionalism is why the FBI and DEA are considered some of the best in the world. They took a chaotic situation and turned it into a textbook example of how to hit a high-value target. Could this be the start of a massive new global crackdown? Make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into these secret operations.